From Voyager to Manjaro, back to Voyager, and then to Antergos. Brian Puwadmojo didn't know it at the time, but he had just found his home. When troubleshooting Paymac after an update left it broken, he needed to log into the forums. Fearful that forums were infested with nameless graybeard trolls just waiting for a fresh newbie to belittle, he quickly realized the Antergos forums weren't that at all when he encountered the handles Joe and Fernando, who walked him through the terminal usage to fix things. Brian had little choice. He was hooked on the community. Later, when Antergos announced they were closing up shop in May of 2019, and with 3 months' time at best, Brian asked the community he grew to love, would we like to continue this community on another forum? Focused mostly on the community aspect and still green as far as Arch and Linux were concerned, he expected a few more technical members to take the initiative and make Antergos 2.0. Instead, he found himself in the middle of a new distro's birth with all eyes on him. Even while protesting that he would just be in the way, our novice Antergos user was now the reluctant leader for a ragtag bunch of Arch users that were ready to take on a new challenge. Of course, Brian did what anybody in that situation would do. He announced an entirely new project. He petitioned the newly formed community for names, but with pushback on every name submitted, including astronomically named Endeavour, they were stuck. With an attractive hosting deal's time limit running out and the community's support hitting a fever pitch with space and spacecraft-themed wallpaper ideas, EndeavourOS was born. Ooh, what a story.
That is a great story.
So in 2019, we mentioned it a second ago, May, Antergos dies. And it was for lack of time, for the same reason a lot of projects die, right?
Mm-hmm. They had some things that made them unique, and the community was definitely one of them, and obviously that hooked Brian.
And it did, right? I mean, the community was a huge piece. He had talked about coming from Voyage, but I didn't know Voyager was an Ubuntu-based distribution. Yep. It would have been on my list had I known about it. And it's still going strong. There's a 2204.1 already. So I mean, they stay very up to date, but I just never heard of it, which is interesting.
It's on the list. It's a short list.
Definitely. So after Antergos dies, long live Endeavour, right? So Joe and Fernando, their usernames were changed a little bit to make the story flow a little bit better, but Johannes Kamprad, who goes by Joe Kamprad on the forums, and Fernando Frozi and Manuel joined quickly after the announcement of, hey, Antergos is dead. I want to keep the community together. What are we going to do? Those three joined, helped change the plan, right? Which was just a community thing.
Right. The plan was just to continue on with the community that was already existing and keep the things that they already had. And so they changed it like really early days.
Right. To a whole actual distro. And so in the About Us page of Endeavour, which made this part of the history gathering really nice, right? Mm-hmm, there's a quote. With the plan to turn Endeavour into EndeavourOS, we deliberately traveled another road than Antergos did. It never was, and it will never be our intention to be an Antergos clone. In fact, our departure point was the Antergos community and not the Antergos distro. And that's why we chose to let go of the look and feel of our predecessor and find our own voice in creating our own identity with the community at our side. So Antergos was very big on having sane defaults and nice defaults.
Still close to Arch, though. Very close, intentionally close to Arch, and not straying too far.
Right.
Sane defaults, yes.
Right, and Endeavour took the opposite approach, which is It is what it is. That's what GNOME said it is, or that's what Plasma decided it was, or that's what XFCE ships with. So, right. And so Endeavour has that keep it simple Arch underpinning.
Yep.
But it's still intended for intermediate users because, as you're going to find out pretty quickly, they didn't install anything like PayMac out of the box. You can go put it there if you want to, but you have to know how to get that all set up and configured to do everything you want it to do. So one other quote from the About Us, this resulted in a distro that is lightweight and ships with a minimum amount of pre-installed apps, an almost blank canvas ready to personalize. So on June 23rd of 2019, the EndeavourOS website is launched. I think this is planting the flag in the ground. Yep. And as we mentioned before, in the bit of the story that introed this, they were running out of time. They had to decide on a name.
Yep.
There was a good deal on web space, on hosting, on all of this stuff, but they had to decide on a name, a domain, everything.
Right.
And that's what pushed them forward. There was one design person, I think. He was going to be the person that decided, I'll handle all the web-facing stuff and make it look pretty and everything. That particular person was the source of the biggest amount of the pushback of, well, I don't like that name. I don't like that name. I don't like that name. Well, he couldn't come up with any names either. So everybody, after everybody started making wallpapers and putting penguins in space and stuff, Endeavour kind of stuck. It became a meme for the community, and that meme became the name.
Right.
So you got to plant the flag. You got to take that deal, plant the flag, call it EndeavourOS, and they didn't change the name, right?
Yeah. Once you get there, just keep it going.
Right. And so the community had to come around somewhere. That's July 2nd. The forum is launched. A week later, on the 7th, the Mastodon account is announced, following a promise to keep things on open platforms that kind of got muddled along the way because there's a pretty big Twitter presence and a few other accounts around. But
they still have the open things too. So Mastodon, Matrix is there.
Right.
Those things are they're very prominent still. So
right, absolutely. Then July 10th, the first beta is available. So you can already get your feet wet with Endeavour with that vanilla goodness already.
Yeah, so we went from May to July, and now we're already doing a beta release.
Then July 15th, the first online stable release. So it betaed for 5 whole days, and then the first offline stable release is available, which includes the customized XFCE desktop environment, which is the only one they customize, and they started doing that very early. The 15th is also the day the EndeavourOS will strive to hit every month with their releases. So the 15th is a early target. Every month, they're going to try to put out an ISO, and we'll see just how that goes.
Well, it's a good target. It's the middle of the month, so there you go.
Right, exactly, right? So August, not 15th, the 17th, after a delay of 2 days for the August ISO, it arrived on time the second time, right? So it was the 15th, and we're like, well, it's going to be 2 more days. Oh, they hit that target. Then another month goes by, September 11th, the path is set. The focus is on a net installer, which offers plenty of choice, but XFCE will stay the flagship desktop environment, and a soon-to-be-released quarterly magazine named Discovery is announced, and donations to the tune of $5 once or monthly. Server space costs money,
No, for sure. Yeah, absolutely It does.
Then the 15th, right on target. The ISO is available. And remember, they don't really have names. They're just respins of the same stuff. It's Arch, right? You're just getting newer packages of the same stuff. So it's not like much changes in those particular things. So there's not really a lot to say. September 28th, the Discovery magazine gets a wider scope, and it'll be much more. It'll be a magazine, a site where community contributions are welcome and focused on the AUR, community scripts, and workarounds. The stuff that you need for Arch when things break.
Sure.
The distribution gets a finer definition as well. These ideas were already around, but defined in a forum post here and there. But now the ideas are officially becoming part of the EndeavourOS identity. And so, quoted, EndeavourOS aims at the group of distro hoppers that are looking for a new challenge in their Linux experience by getting their feet wet, ready to get some elbow grease with Arch Linux in a friendly environment. It was and never will be our vision to offer a feature-rich and out-of-the-box experience. So, and this is going to be a recurring theme. They have to say it over and over. And it's because they have the stigma of coming from Antergos, which did offer that.
Right.
And they can't shake it. And to this day, still cannot shake it. They should. He said it. Brian said it enough times. I think people should get
everybody
the picture
should
by
know
now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But still. Anyway, the AUR helper Yay will be the standard instead of the GUI installer Paymac. And I don't know how many times on the forums I saw, hey, where's Paymac? Why is Paymac not installed? Where is this at? Why is that not there? And it's just use Yay.
Right.
just use Yay.
Go install it. Use Yay.
Right. October 15th, right on target. The ISO's there. October 23rd, the Kalu update notifier is busted. So up until this point, they were using Kalu to let you know that you had to go run your updates. But speaking of updates, some updates of the Arch packages broke it. So you're encouraged to do things by hand for now. The next day. And this is amazing, by the way. The next day.
Yeah, one day. One.
A homespun update notifier, the EOS update notifier, I forget what it's called, was found to be a bit aggressive, right? So they launched it. People gave feedback on it in the same 24 hours here. Seemed to be a bit aggressive and in your face with a 2-hour check and notification. It's kind of annoying.
It's a little quick, yeah.
Right. But they say, all right, be patient. We're going to fix it. Manuel is not a superhero, but we'll get it. Sorted. Yeah. 7 minutes later, an update on the forum post.
That's not superhuman, I'm just going to say. Yeah, no.
Just 7 minutes later, there's an update to it. So, I don't know if he's a superhero or not, but we should keep tabs on him.
Oh,
right?
For sure. Yeah. Yeah.
The net installer on November 1st is on hold due to Joe's real-world obligations.
Yeah.
So the next day, Discovery launches with a few articles written by Brian himself that aren't available anymore that I could find. You can still get some of them on archive.org, but one of my favorites and another recurring theme is an article titled Rolling Release Distros Suck. Now, he's not saying that. That's just feedback that, you get about rolling release distros. But it's a suggestion. It's an article written to implore you to stay cool as Cucumber, right? Arch distros change a lot. And sometimes you run into bugs. Be excellent to each other when that happens because it's inevitable. And as always, the community is there. That's the biggest part of Endeavor is the community.
Well, I think it's easy to miss a memo and having a friendly face on the other side saying, hey, you missed this is a lot better. So he's got a good point.
Right. On the 6th of November, the heavy lifters are finally set in stone. We've heard these names already, though, but Fernando is ISO development, foundation work, and Calamaris implementation. Joe is ISO development, post-check foundation, Calamaris, and DE theming. Manuel is developer implementation for EOS, cleaning up the installation scripts and general post-checks. And Brian is website, server maintainer, community manager, and general coordinator. See, he never quite dove in too terribly far to the technical part of any of this. But hey.
That's okay. You need someone to do all those things.
You do. And everybody rallied around Brian. So
having good roles defined, there's nothing wrong with that. That's fantastic, honestly. And having a less technical role and having somebody focus on those things, that's really needed.
Yep. November 14th. It's noted that the November release will take a little longer than the 15th due to some issues with laptop sleep and XFCE shortcuts. And on the 20th, it's decided we're just not going to have a November release at all. The focus is on a bigger and better December release, including the net installer, but in the meantime, Brian's going to take a quick break. That lasted for about a whole week. Honestly, I think you take a month, but hey,
a week's cool.
Catch your breath. That's okay. December 5th, the December not release refresh is released to address the Kalu issues on October 23rd. But remember, it's not the December release, just a bug fix kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
December 8th, the monthly release on the 15th is now a bi-monthly release, so the team can remain sane. So they're taking a step back a little bit, giving themselves a little more breathing room. And Endeavour Welcome app, EOS Welcome, looked a little different back then, but it's the same welcome app, has been gaining momentum in the background. Yep, that one. Oh, and a friendly reminder, again, they're not the Antergos successor. You just got to keep reminding folks, right? They know where you came from, so they're going to keep tacking you with that. Anyway, December 20th, with Arch preparing a lot of changes to Xorg, the Christmas surprise net installer is postponed. Some bugs, so hang on a little longer.
Yeah.
December 22nd, a Christmas miracle happens anyway with the addition of the Alpix mirror for packages and ISOs instead of just simply hosting them on GitHub. So they have a real live mirror now, and those start coming in more and more as time goes on, but Alpix was the first.
Okay.
The next day, another miracle. The net installer is stable and ready for inclusion on the December ISO. No beta period because they're just that confident.
Just
the team is...
Get rid of there.
Yeah, just shove it in. The team's happy with the basic function, and they need your feedback. So, test it, but it's not a test. 2020, February 13th, there's a recurring theme on the forum. I mentioned it before, and I'll probably mention it again. Chill out. Stuff goes wrong. Just relax. Think, there's a person on the other end of that handle, even if it's Turkey Joe or something, right?
It's still sage advice,
Right. So, chill out. February 28th, the bi-monthly ISO is going to be a little late. The focus is now on when it's ready. Look ahead. The plan is to include translations for the welcome app, Lux encryption in Calamaris, updated branding and theming for Calamaris, a separate NVIDIA ISO. Yeah, you NVIDIA folks, you got to get a whole new thing. So users with the new NVIDIA GPU can boot the ISO because before you couldn't because Nouveau just wouldn't work. The regular core system updates such as the Linux kernel and the Mesa updates will be included as well. March 16th, the ISO is pushed back again. This time, do you remember March? Do you remember what happened March 2020?
Yeah, it wasn't so,
Lockdowns, man.
Yep.
Yeah. So that happened. And on the 19th, the hits keep coming. Everybody has a busted certificate. Bite them at least once. And this just happened to be EndeavourOS's time. So, yeah, every time you went to the website, it was like, not secure. You shouldn't do this. Don't run away really fast. Yeah. Then on April 7th, the ISO marches on, and a release date is imminent. So April 11th, the April release has arrived. The separate ISO mentioned in February never happened. Instead, it was all rolled into an option in the universal ISO. Calamaris is almost 100% with partitions still causing some pain, but Lux encryption is available. Vanilla theming, except for XFCE, is the standard, and the Alpix mirror is now baked right into the installer. So a little faster. April 20th, the April release had some weird boot issues that were seemingly random. I saw the forum post on this one and couldn't really get a lock on what hardware, because it was sometimes and it wasn't sometimes, and other people with the same hardware were just fine and random.
Sounds very kernel related, but yeah.
Probably. But a new ISO was spun to address those. May 10th, the May release is released. The focus is mostly on hardware compatibility and performance. This is the first time, by the way, that we hear about the Linux Pizza mirror. There was no announcement about them being added. I think just because, mirrors were getting added kind of at a faster pace now, so it didn't warrant, each individual getting a shout. But I like Linux Pizza. I think it's in Sweden. It's actually kind of slow for me here in the States, but I choose it anyway because it's called Linux Pizza.
Yeah, pizza.
So, May 15th, the Welcome app gets a facelift. So it's starting to look a lot more like what we expect, what we see today. July 15th, the anniversary, the 1-year anniversary, and on this anniversary, we get a whole new release. On the back of donations throughout the year, July sees EndeavourOS's back-end hardware improvements, which keep the project afloat. The Welcome app gains a tab for own commands. I saw the screenshot, really is called own commands, but now I think it's known as personal commands, or it was. And there was a package cleanup option added to keep the system nice and tidy. September 19th, the new ISO is dropped, as well as EndeavourOS ARM. So the Welcome app gets a few more translation, a resolution button that helped out quite a few people, and access to new wallpapers with a community wallpaper selection in the works. The GNOME Software Center and KDE Discover, ripping them out, just causing confusion.
Needed.
Right. I mean, just use Paymac, use Yay, use whatever, just not those. It's gonna mess you up. So, and the built-in notifier won't give Arch-specific news anymore for the same reason, right? Some of those applied to you, some of those did not. Right. But you got all the notifications to the face anyway, and so you were like, well, so you had to hit the forum every time, like, do I need to? Is this a manual intervention or no? Anyway, the ARM edition was tested on the Odroid N2, the N2 Plus, the XU4, and the Raspberry Pi 4B. But that's not it. That's what they were tested on, but there were also manuals for the Pinebook Pro, Pine 64, and Rock 64. But the statement was made that if it makes the minimum hardware cutoff, it's probably fine. So December 4th, the November release was obviously delayed, but the September ISO's online installer still works just fine. So the cool thing about that is that, right, you connect up to Wi-Fi, you run the installation online, pulls all the newest updates. So, it's not a big deal to not have a new ISO. It's mostly just the kernels and tools if it jives with your hardware.
Underlying bits, but like all the packages you install are going to be the latest ones anyway.
Right. So if you can get to the point where you can turn Wi-Fi on, you're golden.
You're good. Yeah.
December 15th, Fernando gets a new job and takes a back seat on development. Now keep in mind, Fernando was the one that worked on pretty much all of the early stuff for getting Endeavour bootstrapped and working. He worked on, so there was Antergos, and then there was Portergos, I think is what it was called. Anyway, a lot of the Portergos stuff is what ended up in Endeavour, which is what ran a lot of the early Endeavour stuff. Anyway, so we'll hear more about that in a minute. 2021, February 3rd. The November release is available. Wait a minute.
It's February.
The release that was supposed to be in November is now in February. But Brian puts it, it was just fashionably late.
Sure,
That was it. More translations, more terminals, faster mirror updates, PacDiff is added to the check changes, and lots of bugs are squashed, so still making a lot of progress. March 15th, the website gets a refresh, and also important news is added to GitHub. So you can still go there now. I've got a link to it in the show notes. You can go and see, like, these are the headline issues you need to know about these things. There are not a whole lot, and it it's got a historical view on it as well. So you can see the very first one, which was now, and then every subsequent, important news announcement, you got to deal with this kind of thing.
Yeah, lets you know what you have to deal with in the moment.
Yeah. The March 28th, the February release had a bug where updating the welcome app from the welcome app broke the welcome app and prevented it from launching the welcome app. So the solution is just not to update the welcome app. Easy enough. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that one was on the GitHub important news page.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just don't update it. April 3rd, Discovery, the magazine/wiki/community resource/blog, has been discontinued due to lack of writers. It was always meant to be a community thing, and Brian was the biggest voice there, and so instead, it's going to be just more of a knowledge base for x86, 64-bit machines, ARM systems, and where you can find some video tutorials. And it's kind of, I can't say it changed a whole heck of a lot. It's still
mostly that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's still a knowledge base, still kind of a not really a wiki, but it's certainly somewhere you go to figure stuff out.
Yeah.
Right. April 17th, I always want to call this like BSPWM or something, but that's not how it's
BSPWM, yeah.
What does that stand for something?
I believe it does. Well, it's a window manager, obviously. So WM is window manager. I got you there.
Yeah, right.
BSP stands for something. Yes.
Yep. It is definitely a window manager. We know that much. And Sway community editions are added to the installer, and we say goodbye to Deepin. Everybody had trouble with Deepin on Arch, and there was an improved experience that was promised. Pretty much anybody that was shipping it was like, it'll be fine eventually, and then it just never was. So I think we're in a better spot now, but then not so much. June 29th, it's announced that the anniversary ISO won't be available July 15th, not because of something that's broken, though. That's the big thing. They're postponing it not because they just couldn't fit everything in time, but because the ISOs as we know them are being redesigned. So here it comes. Since Fernando held much of the knowledge, all that stuff that came from Antergos that Endeavour was using, since he had taken a step back, looking ahead, it was simpler to just redesign it all. A clean slate, so to speak. August 4th, that redesign is already paying dividends ahead of their next release. Installs that sometimes took hours are now being clocked in at about 6 to 15 minutes.
Wow.
And even 3 minutes. They clocked an install at 3 minutes with the caveat that they had super fast internet. So, hey, if you got fast internet, you got a fast install. August 27th. ISO Next. They were trying to figure out what to call this, and for now they called it ISO Next. That was launched as the first product after the redesign, and the improved install speeds came with it. Apps Info, which is still there today, was introduced, which linked to information and how-tos for each of the application EndeavourOS relies on. Community wallpapers. They said it. Now they did it. Are now available. So you can go grab those. Calamaris got an overhaul and is very close to what we see today. So that process, pretty similar. ButterFS now has automatic sub-volume support, and I'm enjoying that right now. It's amazing. I love it. I don't have to do anything. It
is nice.
Does it for me. No need to double log in for Wi-Fi. That is something that has bugged me on every live installation of anything ever, forever, because it's annoying.
Yeah.
You type in your Wi-Fi password, you install, you get the updates, you reboot. Now what do you got to do? Type in your Wi-Fi password
log
again.
Back into the Wi-Fi. Yeah.
Not in Endeavour. The LTS kernels are now an option in the installer, and a ton more. Just
the list is long.
It was huge. I mean, 2020 and 2021 was when you had these seismic shifts of how good Endeavour was getting, and it just got better and better and better with every release. I mean, it was in the interim between those releases, but the releases when everybody pays attention, so that's when all this news kind of comes out. Anyway, December 3rd, Atlantis 21.4 is out and is the first release to sport the new aircraft name with a year.month version number. It makes it a little easier to figure out if you're on the right ISO. Yeah. Yep. Ships with a hotfix feature, one of my favorite, that allows devs to push patches to the Calamaris installer before it starts in online scenarios. This prevents having to spin ISOs as frequently, but the offline installer will still need fixes that will require a new ISO to be spun. But so this hotfix thing, when there are issues, you go online, and then when you launch the Calamaris installer, before the Calamaris installer launches, it pulls down a new Calamaris. So it launches only the newest one that has any fix that they've pushed since then. Fantastic way to deal with issues in the installer. Pipewire is now the default, and ButterFS uses Z standard compression by default, and again, the list goes on. December 17th, 2 weeks later, almost on the dot, Atlantis Neo, an interim release, is here. So this is when they announce Endeavour will now see major and interim releases. Major releases are exactly as they sound, right? The Atlantis one, okay, I won't spoil it. We have more, but the named ones,
right?
And the interim releases fix workarounds that were required previously, make ISO-wide changes, and will also bring with them updated upstream packages. Atlantis Neo specifically included Power Profiles Daemon, replacing TLP, encrypted ButterFS, now works with Swap, and a few others. Now, as a Christmas surprise, which was part of the interim release, but it wasn't, they just happened to be at the same time. LXDE is now official, and Qtile and OpenBox are community editions. So, side note, if a second interim release is required, and spoiler, we haven't seen one yet, it would be named Nova. So, Atlantis Nova could have been a thing, but
it wasn't.
Didn't need it. 2022, current year, January 21st. The Raspberry Pi 4 gets 64-bit support. Prior to this, 32-bit only. It worked, but if you had more than 4 gigs of RAM, if you had the 8 gig version, you were not quite. And then April 8th, Apollo 22.5 is launched with Worm.
Yeah, this is interesting.
Worm. I suppose Worm was chosen because it starts with a W, ends with an M, window manager, right? Because it's a new X11-based window manager developed by Codic 12, a member of the Community Editions team. Firewall D is enabled by default. UFW seems to be the go-to for a lot of them, but
it does. But yeah, they have Firewall D.
But I've got a bit of a Red Hat background, so Firewall D is cool. Enabled by default, and to the relief of security folks everywhere, right? Like,
well, it's actually enabled, which is another thing that a lot of distros don't do either.
That's what I mean. Like, having it enabled by default, it's one thing to say, well, just don't open that port. It's another thing to say, don't open that port and whatever you do, don't poke a hole in the firewall.
Right.
You have that extra catch, which is the firewall. So, Firewall D, beautiful. Enabled, beautiful. Quick Start is available upon install to help install common apps on a new system. And ButterFS is refined even more by compressing all files after installation instead of just newly created files. Okay, a little background on this. Basically, what would happen is the Z standard wouldn't apply to files that were plopped on your system during install. They would only apply to files after. Now, if those system files got updated, of course, they would be compressed. But if they never got touched, never got updated, never moved or anything like that, uncompressed. So this is now the swap to, everything is compressed. After the install, we're going to make sure we're going to compress it. April 27th, the Apollo ISO sees a fix, and there's a workaround for those that need it. The issue was due to an Arch Linux keyring update. So we said
here's one.
Yeah, the security certificate expired. Kind of the same thing, right? Yeah. Online installations were fixed via the hotfix, so that was fantastic, right? I mean, if you had an internet connection, you didn't really even see this because you immediately hopped on your Wi-Fi or plugged in, and so you got all the fixes immediately. But the workaround was needed for the offline folks, and the fix was trivial, right? I mean, they had instructions how to do it, how to deal with it, and everything.
It's a fairly common thing in Arch too, because like they do it when they roll out their new ISOs.
Right. Exactly. So the fix was trivial, but if you didn't apply the fix or if you didn't get the hot fix, your install would likely fail. June 24th, Artemis 22.6 is launched, named after NASA's Artemis mission meant to lay the foundation for a future Mars mission. Artemis, the EndeavourOS version, lays the foundation for future ARM development. The ARM team has seen lots of success so far with the Odroid N2 series and Raspberry Pi, and a plan to add the Pinebook support to that list. Downgrading EndeavourOS packages is now supported with EOS downgrade. And keyring issues should be much less of an issue now that the online installation updates it automatically. Cool stuff. July 4th. Oh, what a day. The forum is dead. I went down a rabbit hole figuring out what happened, and ooh boy. You know, you might want to blame Endeavour for this one, but it's not their fault. And a little over 24 hours after it was dead, with the help of Jonathan on the Discourse?
Yeah,
right?
I think that's that. Yeah, I mean,
right.
So it's
because
the Discourse,
the project
has their own discourse. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So the Discourse. Anyway, Jonathan on the Discourse helped get everything resurrected. It seemed, as I was reading through that thread, there was a bug that inadvertently obsoleted AMD Opteron, the AMD Opteron that the Endeavour Discourse was running on, among a bunch of 10-ish-year-old CPUs that, just caused havoc for anybody. And so what was funny is that I was going through this thread and I realized that not even the developers had intended for this to happen. What ended up happening was you have to do some kind of local compilation during the installation of Discourse or the upgrade of Discourse, but something was snuck in there that that instruction set just did not work.
Couldn't handle,
just couldn't do it. So it wasn't that Discourse meant to obsolete those CPUs. It was that a change that upgraded something that required it to be compiled on the local machine that just couldn't. So downside, Endeavour had to spend, Endeavour as a team had to spend more money on newer machines, even though Discourse themselves got it fixed a couple of weeks later. But if you heard, they were up 24 hours later, not 2 weeks later. So, Endeavour took care of the problem.
Well,
Discourse did too eventually, but that would have led to a lot of downtime on the forum.
Well, and you know, they're running on 10-year-old CPUs. We're getting close to time to upgrade hardware anyway, right?
That was part of the discussion, right? Like nobody would have been running on these servers had they known that it was going to be one of these types of events, right? They would have upgraded prior to this point, but nobody said anything.
Yeah, it worked, right? So why change it? I get that.
Right, and the Discourse folks, as they mentioned in the Discourse, that's just so weird to say. The Discourse folks in their Discourse did mention that it was not intentional. They did not mean to do this, but the damage was done, and anyway. So August 8th, Artemis Neo just in time for the recording of the show.
That's like recent.
Yep, more Arch keyring fixes, so it'll never happen again, hopefully, maybe. And a locale issue with Calamaris, and of course, better EndeavourOS mirror ranking. So not the Arch rankings, that already happens. EndeavourOS rankings, that is now happening. So really cool stuff. But that's it. That was that as we're recording.
Now.
Yeah, that was like 2 days ago. So we're current. We know everything there is to know about the history of EndeavourOS.